So welcome to today's webinar, Warewolf for Brightpearl customers. So what are we going to be covering today? So first of all, I have a quick slide for some introductions, and then we're going to go over a very quick project overview, so explaining where Warewolf is, the current state of things, and then we'll go straight into a live demonstration where I'm going to take us through stock taking, goods out, and then deliveries, which is goods in. And then we'll come back into the presentation to have a bit of a comparison against Boxora. Of course, there's many, if not every Boxora user on the line today. And then we've got a customer spotlight. So sat next to me, we've got someone from Herbert Sports. So we'll be going through their company profile and how they've adopted and the benefits they're seeing of Warewolf. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A. So just as a reminder, or for anyone who's just joined, any questions or any comments that you have throughout the webinar, please just post those into the questions or chat area of GoToWebinar. I can't see those as we're going through the presentation, but as per the Q&A at the end, I'll be able to pull those up in front of me and make my way through as many questions as I can. So to start off with introductions, so I'm Scott Hill, VP Product at Brightpearl. I've been here for quite a few years. I've been the main sort of internal product and project driver for Warewolf. And I'm joined today by Ian Lilburn, who's the finance director at one of our customers, Herbert Sports. So later on, after the demonstration, we'll be doing a little bit of a back and forth with Ian discussing the benefits that Warewolf has brought to Herbert Sports and their company profile, etc. So a project overview. So as many of you would have heard over the development time, as well as newcomers, so I'll keep it quite brief. So Warewolf is Brightpearl's WMS. So the very short history is that somewhere between 1 and 2 years ago, once we've established that there are many warehouse requirements in addition to what Brightpearl already delivers. So I went to market to try and find a WMS or a warehouse specialist that Brightpearl would integrate to. And that was a big waste of time. So either Brightpearl was already better than those that we could integrate with, or they were just completely an inappropriate scale. So enterprise businesses rather than Brightpearl's core customers, such as yourselves. So Warewolf was born. So then we've designed Warewolf and we've seen it through to development. So as where it is today, so it's clear of the beta cycle. So thank you very much for all of those who are online today who took part in the beta cycle. It was very useful for me as a product manager. Everyone gave great feedback, and there's a lot still going on. But it is now readily available and actively being used. So not just Herbert Sports, who we'll be hearing from today, but many businesses are using Warewolf in one fashion or another, but mainly all in their businesses today. As for where the project is with regards to development, so it's an ongoing piece of development. The deliveries, goods out, and stock take that you'll see today is all live and ready to go. So we've just some final pieces that we're adding to deliveries as per some customer feedback that mainly came in last week, and then we'll be progressing over to transfers and some dashboards. But there's loads of things that we're going to be adding to it over the time. So that's where it is today. So yeah, getting straight to it, we'll jump straight into the live demo. So take myself out of full screen here, and we'll move over into Warewolf. So we'll start off with stock take. So a couple of sort of introductory points around Warewolf before I dive into the detail of it. So first of all, it's completely web-based. So I've just logged in via a browser here, just like Brightpearl. So there's nothing to install. You don't have to buy specific hardware from us or anything like that. It's very accessible. Another thing to mention is that it's permission-based, so associate, team lead, and manager. So I'm logged in as a manager today so that I can show you everything that's going on, and I've also got all of the additional columns and everything turned on, but it is permission-based like Brightpearl. So associates who are there to do things, to perform tasks such as shipping orders or go around counting stock, and then a manager who really acts as a gatekeeper for anything that has a financial consequence in Brightpearl, such as writing off stock or deleting or exporting any data. A couple of UI points. So one of Warewolf's key objectives was to be as easy to learn as possible. There's many of you and many of our other customers that have a high turnover with regards to staff in the warehouse, or they rely on an agency at peak times. So one of the main things about our WMS is that you can learn it extremely quickly in comparison to something that's difficult. So the idea of a person who's new to the business, they don't have to sit through hours of documentation or anything like that. Lots of Warewolf is just designed to lead the way, such as highlighting out actions in blue here. Any filters, so pretty much every screen where it's relevant has a nice big filter. So by just selecting some information, applying a filter, we'll see it all goes blue to give some feedback, to say exactly what you'd like back. All the screens that are relevant for you can configure the columns as well as exporting out should you want to. So yeah, really just a few high-level pieces to introduce the platform before we dive into the stock taking. So with stock takes, there's really two types of stock take that Warewolf delivers against. So the first is a spot check. So a spot check is more of a correction rather than a full count or a full stock take. So you're able to scan, or as I just have, search for a product, go into its details. So all of the details are synced over from Brightpearl. So something I should have mentioned there in the introduction is that there is no creation of data over in Warewolf. Everything is just synced over from Brightpearl, from products through to warehouses, through to staff and their permissions. Warewolf fills itself up from your Brightpearl account, basically. So back to the spot checks, we've got our details, and the piece that matters now is the stock availability. So the in-stock and on-hand numbers are shown. If I go ahead and select to amend one of these, we can then see exactly where the stock is over the multiple locations within this particular warehouse. So from here, I can make my change. So if we were to take one away, for example, a compulsory action is giving a reason. So I'll just say it's been broken, and then we submit that. So that's gone ahead and made it stock amendment. So if I was an associate, that would have put it in a queue to be authorized by my manager. And if I was a manager, that would fly all the way through and immediately update Brightpearl. So this is, as I said, this is just for corrections or ad hoc changes where you don't want to walk through the full feature. So the other type of stock take, which will obviously where most people spend their time and what people are looking for, is a stock take count. So the easiest way to explain one is just to get on with one. So we'll go ahead and create a new count. So this is the screen where we are creating and deciding what it is we're about to set out and count. So with Warewolf, we're now advocating that you're doing much more frequent stock takes, smaller cycle counts where you're concentrating on, a subset of your products or, an area, rather than just panic counting everything at the end of the financial year or end of the quarter. The reasoning, because it betters your inventory management. So by counting more often, without the huge time overlay or the lack of systems, you would therefore have a better understanding of any discrepancies, or you know exactly where your stock levels are, and therefore the rest of the business is informed and can act accordingly, such as purchasing or the multi-channel teams, etc. So the details of what you can actually count. So everything is driven from our stock take type. So I'll talk us through these. So starting with location. So location, I'm just going to select one of my warehouses. So this is where you want to perform a count based on physical locations in the world. So all of my zones and locations have been synced over from Brightpearl. If I wanted to do a full stock take, I would just go ahead and select everything, but it might be that I only want to count a certain area, such as bulk storage today, or one particular aisle, or something like that. So it just means that you can segment up and count specific parts of your warehouse. The next two, brand and category. This is product brand and product category. Again, these are all of my brands that live in Brightpearl, and all my categories as well, with the various sort of trees of support here, so we can do child categories and keep going. So this is where you're able to pick specific groups of products that you'd like to be counting. So next we move into top sellers, which is really where we start advocating and advising on what you should be counting, as opposed to just enabling you to count a subset of products. So top sellers is where I'm able to select a date range. So let's just do last month through to today and hit fetch. So, one thing now, so the amount of, the number of items to be counting, so let's say 10, and we hit go on there. And what Warewolf's just done is gone and fetched the 10 items with the highest throughput during that date range. So effectively these are the SKUs, these are the products that are being interacted with the most, therefore they've been subject to the most potential damages or human interaction, or maybe they've been moved, they've been put on one shelf for one reason or another. So these are the items that have been interacted with the most and therefore subject to discrepancies. So very similar to that, we've got high value. So high value allows me to select a cost price list, enter a number of items I'd like to count. So let's stick with 10, hit refresh, and then this has gone ahead and found the 10 most expensive things on that price list. So really this is me effectively what are the assets that, with discrepancies it would hurt the most, or what items do I really need to keep on top of from my financial point of view. So it's just where you can keep on top of the the things, as I said, that would really hurt if you were doing a full stock take and you weren't able to understand why those had discrepancies. And then finally we've got special selection. So special selection is effectively if you've got any criteria that we've not answered in those first few types. Here you can just go searching for absolutely anything. So this is similar to the search modals that you'll find inside Brightpearl. So we can go looking for a particular name or brand or subcategory, vendors, etc. And then you're able to just cherry pick out the products that you'd like to count and then add those to this particular stock count. So that's just taking us through the various types. So a lot of information there. I'm yet to find a request that doesn't match into one of these. So for today, we're going to be doing a full stock take of the Bristol warehouse. So I'm just going to add all of the locations quickly. So the other things that we have on the screen, so assignee. So assignee is something that's spread throughout Warewolf, so the ability to claim ownership over a particular thing, so a stock take, a goods out note, a batch, as we'll see later. So I'll grab this one for myself. And a point to remember from the introduction of this screen is that it's not necessarily the counter that's creating these. So it's designed in such a way that a manager or someone in head office, etc., would be creating these counts, handing them out, giving them references. So we'll just go with the imaginative webinar one. But also we can give this a date. So if it's not to be counted right now this second, then what I can do is perhaps schedule this for the 20th, and then on the 20th it will show up in Scott's filters. So yeah, just able to create as many counts as you like remotely. And then we've got a couple of features here which make a little bit more sense as soon as we see the next screen, but bear with me. So first of all, we've got the guide. So a guide is something you can turn on and off. If we take the context of we were doing a product count, so let's say that I was counting everything in category 1, people that are new to my business, or perhaps I've got products that they all look alike, shoes or contact lenses all in identical boxes, etc. Someone new to my business would have no idea what category 1 actually entails. Therefore, if I was to ask them to count it, they're going to rely on their colleagues or asking me, or they'll just take forever, or they'll get it wrong, etc., etc. So any circumstance where time is just going to really increase, you can turn on a guide which will reveal the SKU and or location that product could be found at. So a very important piece of the counts within Warewolf is that we never show the expected quantity. So at no time when I'm walking around performing my count on the next screen will you see, you should find 8 here, anything like that, for the obvious reasons of, it'll overly guide the count, or, it supports false numbers or theft or additional discrepancies, etc. So something you can turn on and off, but leaving it on is perfectly safe, and it just gives the counter a bit of a guide to send them towards the SKU or towards the location to reduce the time it's going to take them to perform the count. And the other piece we can see is a location reminder. So the workflow that you'll notice on the next screen for performing a count is to scan or set a location, so effectively saying, here, I'm here, this is the location I'm currently in front of. You then enter the contents of that, or scan the contents of that, and then you move. And then you just repeat that until you run out of warehouse. So you say where you are, what's there, and then move, and then just keep going on that. So if we take the assumption now that I'm doing this overnight or early in the morning and I'm half asleep, etc., if I was to forget to tell Warewolf when I take a step to the right, then effectively I would just be filling up my stock take with an entire warehouse's worth of items into location 1. I come back, I review that, I send it to my manager, and they just tell me it's useless and I have to go do it again. So to avoid those horror stories, we've got the option to turn on a location reminder. So what I'm saying here is every 3 products that I scan into a single location, Warewolf will prompt me to say, hey, you've not moved recently. And I can either clear that if that really is the case, or I can quickly remedy the stock take. So really what we're doing, again, as I've mentioned, we're avoiding those horror stories, which mean that you can then take a step back, fix what you need to fix, and then proceed on with the count, and you don't have any embarrassing conversations with your manager. So these are just all of the options about creating the count. So the next piece is the actual counting of it. So we'll go ahead and jump straight into it. So this is the counting screen inside Warewolf, and it's very similar to a lot of screens in Warewolf, such as the picking and the packing screens, which is on purpose to help with the ease of learning. So really what we're doing here is that last workflow where you say where you are, you say what's there, and you just carry on. So I'm using mouse and keyboard today, but of course everything, Warewolf in its entirety is driven by barcode scanners as well as keyboards. Obviously, there's great benefits in using scanners with regards to mistakes and speed. Obviously, it's very hard to show during a webinar. But so we've defaulted to the first location in the warehouse. So as I type in some products, we'll see that the rest of the line has been bloated out. So we've got the location already, the product's then been added. We can then continue to add other products. So let's just, we'll pick another one further down the bottom. So as you can see, it's just add another row, still in the same location. I can continue to scan this number and it will go up, or I can just select it if I wanted to. We've got the option to change the scanning quantity. So let's say I was moving into bulk storage, or I was scanning a box of something rather than individuals. If these products come in a box of 100, obviously I don't want to scan that 100 times. And then as I make a further selection, 100 will now be added rather than 1. So we'll set that back. We'll now change the location. So we'll just take a step somewhere. We add another row. And really we're just going to complete this until we run out of warehouse or run out of products, basically. So we'll just continue to add these products. Additional things that you can do, you can add comments, which will then show up later. So I can just say, we found one. That will then show up to my reviewer. You can search by things, you can type in barcodes that aren't scanning. You can park the count to be picked up later, view that guide that I mentioned earlier. So lots of time here. Again, just to reiterate, we never show the expected quantities. It's all designed to be using barcode scanners or walking around with touchscreen tablets, etc. You're saying where you are, what's there, and then you're progressing. So the progression piece is to submit. And just as a sort of, as an audience, just be aware that I'm moving through these quite quickly so I can cover all of the features. I am skipping past quite a lot of the smaller pieces here. So we've now got the count that's ready for review. So as a manager, I can then select it, and I can select to review. So that's going to go ahead and move it and generate my variance reports. So this is then the screen. It's locked down to the manager. And what we're doing here is comparing what's just been counted with what was expected in Brightpearl. So everything of the left of the sort of center of my screen here is what was just counted. So we can see the count number, all the product details, etc. And then to walk you through the rest of the screen, we've got channel quantity. So this is Brightpearl, so what was expected in Brightpearl. So I counted 106, only 42 was expected. The variance of that, so at a unit level, what was the variance? Then we've got the value, so I obviously counted some very expensive things by accident, so what the value of the count was, what the value was in Brightpearl, and the estimated variance of that. So estimated, of course, is to cater for things like landed costs or any fluctuating costs. The figures at the moment are driven by the cost price list at the top. We can also see where people have added any notes. So there's lots going on the screen, lots of different options. But to cut down to why it exists so that as a manager I can review what was just counted and then whether I'm going to accept that and update Brightpearl, or whether I'm going to reject it and then have it recounted, basically. So with some filters to make this far more manageable on the large account, so you can search for particular products, or where variance is over a certain amount or over a certain value. You would then be selecting them. There's an alternative view to look at product groups rather than just individuals. And then you've got the accept and reject. So accept is saying off you go and update Brightpearl, and then that'll just crunch its way through, tell you when it's done. And reject is to put it back to the start of the queue. And partials are fully accepted as well. If we were to select just half of the results that I have here, and we were to say accept, then effectively all of the rejects from this view would be put back onto a child of this count and put back to the ready to count stage, and all of the accepted ones would then start updating Brightpearl, and vice versa. So really it's just giving you a full tool set where you can then review what was just counted with what you were expected. You can review multiple counts at once, which means if you've divided up your warehouse and given it out to multiple counters to go and perform things, count their own zone each, you can still review the entire warehouse at once. And then you're just accepting and rejecting, and really you're here until you have accepted everything. So rather than make you all wait until it's updated Brightpearl, that's where we'll sort of finish up the stock take today. The last sort of thing just to give you a look at, and again a bit of a summary. So you can see all of the counts here. This is one of the screens where you're able to select all of the columns that you'd like, make your way through them. Large filters, so you can go finding things such as previous counts if you wanted to, if you were doing a bit of hunting to find out what happened on a particular product, etc. But yeah, to recap the stock takes, so first of all, a very quick and effective feature for the corrections that you need to perform. So, breakages or, just changing one particular SKU, and you don't need to walk through this feature. But then the far better feature set of being able to create full and cycle counts, make your way through a full scanning feature where you're actually collating that count, and then a managerial review screen where you're able to judge, what's accepted and what's deemed for a recount, and then you go ahead and update Brightpearl, and then you're done. So moving on to the goods out note piece, and again, just as a reminder for anyone who joined after the introduction, any questions on any features or any page or anything that I'm saying, please just go ahead and enter into the GoToWebinar panel. I can't see that at the moment, but we have time for questions at the end, and then I'll bring them all up and we'll answer as many as we can. So as I said, we'll move on to goods out. So to introduce the goods out, this is really all of the order assembly and dispatch, building on top of Brightpearl's core workflows of fulfilling an order, print, pick, pack, ship. So for any newcomers, the only compulsory steps within that are to fulfill the order and then to ship it. So if you're not picking because it's not appropriate for your products, or if you want to do them in a slightly different order, as I'm about to talk us through, then that's absolutely fine. And Warewolf is extremely friendly with the existing softwares that you have in place. So whatever workflows you have in Brightpearl, whether that means that you have a certain department that's not the warehouse that's choosing the orders that are to be fulfilled, or if you're using other technologies such as Brightpearl automation or any carriers, etc., Warewolf can effectively pick up at any stage. So I'm going to walk us through the entire journey inside Warewolf, which is finding orders, fulfilling them, and then processing them. But of course, if they've already been fulfilled elsewhere, or for any reason, Warewolf can actually just pick up at the goods out note stage rather than the order stage. So again, to walk us through all of that, here we're looking at orders. So this is looking up against my Brightpearl account live. So I created a handful of orders on a specific shipping method, standard post, that we'll be using here. So when I filter, that's talking to my Brightpearl account and bringing back the orders that I am to fulfill. And again, custom columns, I've chosen to have the customer name here, good old Alicia and all her orders, as well as the number of SKUs and the number of unique products within that. The reason I can only select a few of them here is because the rest have been fulfilled already, so of course I could have filtered those out. So we've selected the orders we'd like to try, and then we've got fulfill. So this is the equivalent of the fulfill modal inside Brightpearl from the sales listing, where you're able to opt in or out of partial fulfillments. You can select a shipping method. You can either inherit it from the order, the customer choice, or again, if something else has already decided the shipping method, that's supported, or you can override it with something else. You can also set a failover. So as you guys know, shipping method isn't compulsory in Brightpearl, so you can say, should it be empty, then always use a certain one. And then we can also perform a status update on the orders as well, only the successful ones. So we can say, update these to be processing, if I wanted to. So when we hit save and close, that's going to fulfill the orders using the Brightpearl API. So again, as a warehouse team, I don't need access to Brightpearl at all. This is all happening remotely. So if the warehouse team has the authority to decide which orders should be processed first, then they never need to access Brightpearl. So now we're looking at the goods out note screen, and it's been pre-filtered to the ones that we've just created. So yeah, these three goods out notes that were made for those three individual orders, and I've chosen to just pretty much have the core information shown here. So as you can see by the actions at the top, it's building on that Brightpearl workflow of print, pick, pack, ship. So as I select something, the first action that we perform, so I'm going to hit print, the first action that we perform, Warewolf will ask us if we want to create a batch. So this is something that's new to the Brightpearl world. So a batch really is just a grouping, a physical sort of group that you assign all of these. So these three individual goods out notes can all make their way into a batch. And then I'm going to push the batch around as opposed to selecting the three goods out notes and moving those around. So it's really just for scalability and making it far more user-friendly to interact with multiple orders at once. So you can give it a reference if you want to. We fill it up with something unique. And then again with the assignment, so I can claim these, as a picker I can take those or I can hand them out if I'm dishing it out to my colleagues in the warehouse. So yeah, being able to create a batch, which is great for scalability, as well as assigning them as well, which means that I won't trip over my colleagues' goods out notes and vice versa. So we'll go ahead and hit print. We do have some nice preview features here as well. So the reason I made our way through the print was just a segue into saying that I don't have to replicate any of my templates. That's just in that split second it took, that's just hit Brightpearl and fetch my templates ready to be printed. As I clear that away and just refresh my screen, we'll see those have all been printed. So from here, we're going to drive away from the batches screen. So that was batch 163 that we just created. So that's the one that we'll push around. And then we'll make our way into picking. So picking, for anyone else or anyone who's not using it just yet, is the concept where rather than walking around the warehouse and grabbing the items for a particular order, packaging that up, and then just doing that 100 times for 100 orders, picking is the concept of generating a bit of a shopping list for what are all of the items I need for a particular batch of goods out there, so 3 in my case. And I'm going to go fetch all of those at once, and then I'm going to assemble them into individual packages later. So we can hit pick. That'll go ahead and move this into picking, which again is completely designed to be driven by a scanner. There are a lot of benefits into strapping a barcode scanner into your team's hands rather than mouse and keyboard like I am here. As you're migrating, frequently asked question is, can they continue to be paper-based here and scanner later? Of course you can, so you can print this screen and then mark it as done later. But on the assumption that we're walking around with a touchscreen tablet or a scanner in our hands as well, the screen behaves much like the stock take screen where you're able to search for things and everything like that. These quantity numbers here, so by tapping or scanning one of those, it'll mark the row as complete, so I only needed one of that particular towel. The progress bar has moved up as well, so there's lots of visual feedback. There's the ability to add quick quantities, so if we were doing 200 rather than 2 here, I could pick up a box of 100 and it will add those in. As I then scan my way through, it continues to let me do so. If you were to try and scan a product that was not relevant on the pick, so you'd be performing a mispick basically, not sure if the audio alert came through there. I thought I turned those off, obviously not. So if you tried to perform effectively a mispick, an illegal pick, or a pack, as we'll see on the next screen, Warewolf will tell you off. So it's really about just making sure that you don't accidentally ship the wrong item, really. So you just don't pick up the wrong thing when it's not required. So yeah, that's the interactivity with the screen. We've got some nice sort of features that I'll breeze past for now as well. But one that I did want to mention, as it's very relevant to the vast majority of conversations I've had, is the ability to pick from elsewhere. So as per Brightpearl, Warewolf continues to use the first in, first out method to pick which units of stock should be used. And anyone who's got stock in multiple locations I'm sure will have experienced the story that I'm about to take us through. So I'm actually going to undo the pick for this because we'll use this product here. So this particular product, the second one on the screen, the sweater, grey small, I'm being told to go and fetch 2 from this particular location. So let's say I get there and they aren't there, or maybe only one's there, or to use my colleague's example, someone's spilled a tin of paint on them. So at the moment, that's a bit of a pain in a non-WMS, because that means I have to sort of scrap the goods out note, go back, update things, recreate them after I've performed the stock correction, etc., which cites at anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes each time. So rather than getting upset, what I can do is just select the location here. And we should see, yeah, so this is basically offering me a place where all of the locations that the product was in within this warehouse, sorted out numerically, I'm able to then substitute from. So I can pick one from this place instead. You have to give a reason, found one. So yeah, basically what that's done is it's allowed me as a picker to reroute myself to the nearest stock. I can go ahead and pick from there. I don't have to go back to base or go and tell my Brightpearl administrator that they need to change things. But from a Brightpearl point of view, as soon as we finish this, so as soon as I mark them all as picked, what that's going to do is actually update Brightpearl with the exact batch of stock that I did take. So the tight integration, and really a reason why we couldn't use Brightpearl with another WMS, is the passing back and forth of that information. So obviously from a warehouse point of view, all it needs to know is where it is and how many. From the Brightpearl accounting point of view, we need to know the exact unit of stock that was used, etc. So in just that, in that quick feature, I've enabled my picker to work around as fast as possible, and my Brightpearl account has not suffered any data integrity issues. Everything is kept up to date. So let's move over to pack. So packing is a really good conversation opener on one-to-one demonstrations as hopefully a lot of you have experienced so far. So with packing, so the concept of taking what was just picked and packing them into the individual order packages, we actually have multiple workflows in which you can choose from, or use a bit of a hybrid model, etc. So I'll walk us through them quite quickly. So what you have today, basically, of seeing the goods out note, or if you're using Boxora, the ability to scan a goods out note, those of course survive. That's perfectly fine. If those are working for you, you can do them in Warewolf. So if you were just sort of eyeballing an order number, select it, select to pack, or of course you could have just scanned it and this would have happened automatically. We're then taken to the packing list for this one particular order. So again, the exact same behavior as the picking screen. If you try to scan something that doesn't exist on this order, you get told off. And then as you make your way through, so I fully scan that package. I've then got the option to update the order a little bit if I wanted to, or I can just hit OK to be moved here, and we can see that that one's been packed, and that would have updated Brightpearl. So that's the core workflow that exists today, where you're looking at an order or you're scanning a specific order, and we open it up, you pack it, and then that's it. So the next sort of things I'm going to talk about are the features we have at the top here. So the ability to auto switch and auto print. So auto print is quite a simple one to explain. If you've got auto printing on and you've not printed anything so far, because maybe your picker is walking around with a tablet, or they're digital, then when we move into the packing screen to start packing this, because I select it perhaps, or I do the next workflow. So I select it, I hit pack, then if it's unprinted and this is on, then Warewolf will print a packing note basically. So it means that I don't have to print any paperwork at the front and then have that move around with the stock. It means that I only have to do it and really commit to it when it's at my pack station. So just a nice workflow enabler for those with their warehouses and their printers set up in a certain way. And the next piece that goes sort of hand in hand with that is auto switching. So everything I've said so far implies a order-driven packing workflow. So by that I mean you're doing an order at a time and you're driven by the order number or the order number's barcode, etc. So you're doing order 1, pack it, and then order 2, pack it, etc. So with Warewolf, we enable you to go SKU-driven. So by that I mean that rather than worrying what exists on order 1 and running off of paperwork or running off of a number, I'm able to just put my hand in the trolley or the cart, pick up an item, I scan it, and Warewolf will just automatically open the first unpacked goods out note that contains that item for me, with that item packed. And of course, with auto printing on, that could also spit out the paperwork. So what that means is that I no longer have to think or eyeball products out of my selection, out of my pick batch. I'm able to just pick up items, scan them, and Warewolf will do the rest. So auto switching introduces the concept of, let's say that I picked up a product, I scanned it, it opens up order number 1, marking that one as packed. So from there I've got two choices. So I can either look at the screen and see, okay, what else does order number 1 need, and then sort of eyeball those out of the cart. Or I can leave auto switching on, not care about what else remains on order number 1, just put my hand in the cart again, scan a product, and if it belongs to another order, then Warewolf would have parked the first one as mid-packed and would have automatically opened up the next one with that item packed. So what that results in that I effectively no longer need to look at the screen or worry about finishing up an order. Obviously this requires a decently sized pack desk where you can simultaneously pack multiple orders, but it really just removes the thinking. So this is, obviously it's not for everyone, but the customers that have found this particularly useful are those where products all look very similar, they're all in identical boxes, or you want to take that thinking time away from the pack station because you just want them to do more with their day. So yeah, a lot of information there, and again, tailored demonstrations as well as literature that we've written up sort of walk through the workflows probably a bit more effectively. But in summary, at the pack stage, you can either be order-driven, which is picking up an order or scanning an order, doing it in its entirety, and then putting it aside and doing that until you finish the batch. Or you can be SKU-driven, which is to forgo and not really care about what's on each individual order and just worry about emptying your cart. So I won't take us through automatically packing up all of those. So the last piece in the workflow is just to ship. So shipping is as trivial as it is in Brightpearl. So I just selected that one goods out note there, marked it as shipped. Because Warewolf is by default filtering away everything that's deemed completed, acting like a constant to-do list, That's now disappeared from my filter. We could, of course, change the filter to go find it again. But yeah, the ship update goes ahead and updates Brightpearl. Brightpearl does its thing of updating the accounts for the stock that's gone, and more importantly, updating all of the sales channels with the shipment, any tracking references, etc. So the last thing that I'm just going to mention, as per the tracking references, is that, again, Warewolf does not interrupt any carrier integrations we already have. So the vast majority of you are on Ship Theory or Ship Station. All of those are hooked up to Brightpearl either when a goods out note is created or when it's been packed, etc. So Warewolf is completely compatible with those as they are today. Effectively, Warewolf is just telling Brightpearl when these things have been completed, so they've either been created or they've been packed, etc. And then the carrier integrations continue to just pick up against those. So things like auto printing or embedded labels, etc., they just carry on as required. So yeah, there's no interruption to those. It might be that now you've got a better feature set in place at the pack station. You move into auto printing and doing it after packed. But at a high level, there's no interruption to the carrier integrations. Everything carries on and can be as automated as you like. So lots of goods out note information there, taking us through the workflow. So to finish up on the demonstration, we'll just dive on to deliveries. So deliveries is Warewolf's terminology for any incoming stock, so anything that's arriving. So that's a purchase order, a sales credit, or a transfer. So again, lots of info going on the screen. The same stuff again, we're being able to customize your columns and everything like that. So from a demonstration point of view, I'm actually just going to talk about the what a delivery is and how you can hook it up to Brightpearl. So again, we'll just demonstrate it. So we'll create new. You can give a delivery reference if you wanted to. Select the warehouse that is coming in. Of course, if you only have one, you don't need to. But then the key thing here is to associate two. So just to pause for a second, what we're doing with these screens are effectively, it's ideal, it's best practice, if realistic, to create these beforehand. So you're able to sort of schedule in deliveries, or perhaps someone's just arrived at the warehouse and you need to react. So we're creating a delivery, you give it a reference, which is typically, a supplier or a vendor reference or, a customer reference, etc. But then you're really doing this associate to. So you can forgo this and do it later, but best practice would be to do it up front. So association means what thing in Brightpearl do you want to hook this up to? So defaulting to purchase orders, which is, of course, where the vast majority of usage is happening. So what we're doing here is really just filtering against my Brightpearl account. So we can type in a supplier or customer reference. We can go hunting for a particular order ID, a contact. We can even just scan the first product that's coming off on the delivery. We can look at the delivery dates. So what's due today versus due within the next week. So for myself, I created a purchase order that I'm just typing in the number for. We'll hit search. And that goes ahead and finds the various purchase orders or sales credits, etc., that you want to accept now. So so I just have the one, and we'll hit save. And what that's done is it's created a link between the delivery that we have over in Warewolf and what already existed inside Brightpearl. So again, it's not a compulsory step at this stage. If you're being far more reactive, or perhaps the original order didn't exist in Brightpearl, then that's fine, you can carry on. But the benefits that we can then offer against this are that when you go ahead and move into the receive stage of a delivery, you're able to then police it against something. So this particular screen, I'm going to talk about it just very quickly. What we're doing here is selecting a goods in location. So where would I like to scan in or enter in stock whilst I'm performing a delivery? So I've just entered one place here, rather than immediately sort of putting it back onto the shelves. So again, there's a few things I breezed past there. But this screen, just like the others, but in reverse, kind of like a stock take screen more than a picking screen, I'm then able to scan or to select the items that have shown up, basically, with the quick quantities again, so I can just add the box. There's a few additional features around deliveries which are really nice, such as adding the notes, a bit of a summary, that kind of thing. We have some additional features around setting totes for those of you that are using multiple warehouses for distribution. You're able to enter products that weren't originally on here. So if I just go ahead and, what's on here? So we'll search for a product that doesn't exist on the order. You get told, so let's say that you just scanned something that wasn't on this delivery already. You can either, you can back away at this point, or you can go ahead and add it. So let's just say that 10 have shown up. That'll add it as a row here. And then I can go ahead and I can continue to scan all of these, etc. and then make your way on. So really the next sort of piece, so I'm going to stop the demo here for time purposes, but the next sort of piece is then reconciling it back to Brightpearl, so the goods in note, creating that over the API. So again, it means that the warehouse team don't need access to Brightpearl to do this, therefore they never see a cost price, etc., which is obviously really important. So you're able to build on the standard foundations that Brightpearl has of creating a purchase order, creating a sales credit. You're able to scan against it all of the real-world scenarios of not everything showing up, or more than expected showing up, etc. All of those are catered for on this screen, and then we're really just reconciling them back to Brightpearl, much like we were reviewing the stock take. We'd be reviewing the delivery, and then we'd be putting it away. So from a demo perspective, that's where I'm going to stop today. So walking us through stock take and its variations, goods out in all of the details there, and then deliveries, which is the ability to scan goods in against purchase orders or sales credits, and everything without touching Brightpearl, basically. So it's a complete warehousing tool. Again, from a demo perspective, I know I flew through that really quickly. It's because of the time. Any questions that you do have, please put them in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll jump to them. We'll jump to them at the end. So moving back into the presentation now. So just go back into full screen here. Great. So moving on from the live demo. So the next screen I'm going to talk us through quickly is a comparison with Boxora. So hopefully I just answered everyone's Boxora questions by by virtue of doing the Warewolf demo. But just as a bit of a summary. So, so these are the main things that I always get asked about, really. So as a platform, so Boxora is a browser extension. Warewolf is a full web platform, so it's it's a real piece of kit as opposed to a stopgap. With all the features, it's there's no end in sight for the delivery schedule, etc., which means we're going to continue building on it, etc., adding new features. So yeah, it's just a different world. Stock take, so Boxora allows the ad hoc corrections. Warewolf, there's the full module there as well, so that means you can do your ad hoc corrections, but they're improved with a reviewable process. In Warewolf, then you've got the full feature set for actually creating counts. What would you like to count, everything, or just certain things, and then moving those through. Goods out, so Boxora facilitates the packing stage only in a simple workflow of being order driven, whereas Warewolf has the full module, so you can benefit all the way from fulfillment through to shipping, with multiple packing workflows that enable businesses that deem it worthy to be SKU driven rather than order driven. Then deliveries, so deliveries just don't exist in Boxora, and in Warewolf you can scan in inventory against purchase orders and sales credits. So assemblies is one thing that sort of exists in Boxora and doesn't yet in Warewolf, so definitely planned, but anyone who's just using Boxora for assemblies today, Warewolf isn't able to take over that. And then they're actively being worked on, as I mentioned, so Warewolf is the future, really. Boxora isn't. So Warewolf is the full platform that's being worked on, being enriched with more features, and is our future. It's key to the Brightpearl strategy. So that's hopefully just a bit of a summary. So, so for this next section, for the next couple of slides, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, I've got Ian Lilborn, the Financial Director of Herbert Sports, next to me. So we're going to go through a couple of slides here. So, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off by asking Ian to walk us through Herbert Sports, to introduce them at a business level.
Hi Scott, thanks very much for that and that quick whiz through of Warewolf. Yeah, Herbert Sports, we're a sports retailer focusing on selling technical goods to players rather than fashion sport. It was a family business started way back in 1976 and I joined them about 8 years ago. We have a total of 21 people based at our retail outlet in East Grinstead, which you can see on the slide there, and at our 3,000 square foot warehouse, which is nearby, including head office functions. We've got a total of 13,000 SKUs in our system, and all our goods are delivered to the warehouse where we split them up for the shop, with the rest put away in the warehouse to cover our internet business and for daily replenishment of the shop. Well, sales channels, we have Amazon, and we sell across many of the European channels, so obviously UK, France, Germany, Italy and Spain. eBay as well, and we have a Magento 2 based website for direct customers. And we've been a customer of Brightpearl and Boxora's for, well, since 2013, 4 years.
Great stuff. I remember it very well. So now, if you wouldn't mind sort of walking us through, so pre-Warewolf, so with Brightpearl and Boxora, what was your wish list? What was the warehouse requirements you had?
Okay, well, the nature of our business is most people place their orders over the weekend, so we have Mondays as busy days, around Christmas is very busy as well. But broadly speaking, 100,000 orders per annum is what we process, with a busy day requirement of 1,500 orders. Most of the orders come in being e-commerce, business to customers. We have an average order of about 1.1 items per order. So huge number of orders and a huge number of packets going out, and we need to keep track of those and simplify the job as far as possible. Since most of our products are actually quite small, things like swimming goggles or footballs and the like, we tend to batch goods out orders into groups of 150, go and pick them all in one go, and take it from there. So we're very mindful that in our low margin business, keeping costs right down is absolutely vital. So in other words, increasing productivity of our team. One of the things which we suffered from previously were mispicks. People are human, and if you don't have a system to force them to put the right thing in the right pack, every now and again they send out the wrong item to the customer. And again, in our low margin business, for every item which goes out in error, we need to sell 7 more orders to make up the cost of putting that right for our customer. Very expensive. And other things which you don't really think about but annoy customers and are just plain inefficient are things like selling products we don't have because our stock count is out, or equally finding stuff in the warehouse that we didn't know we had and we're not selling. That's almost as bad. So our requirements are really to cover off all of those angles, and for it to be any new system, for it to be very easy for people to pick up and easy to administer. So those are our core requirements.
Yeah, perfect. And then finally, so how has Warewolf delivered against those requirements?
Okay, well, we were writing at the beginning on the beta on this project, and we've been using the workflow that Scott described, which was the SKU-driven stock flow. So we found that really where the key benefits come from are, one, picking. So we now have an efficient pick route around the warehouse. So when we batch up our goods out notes into batches, we do those by warehouse area. And the biggest one, the one that saves us errors and is much quicker, the SKU is the packing using the SKU-driven process. And that's saving us something like 25% time in the warehouse. So that's an absolutely major saving in terms of workflow. The mispicks, which I mentioned beforehand, it was about 1 in 1,000 orders were going astray. Someone picked a red one and it should have been a slightly different shade of red, and they didn't notice, that kind of thing. And that's now almost completely gone. I think we've had one error like that since we've been using Warewolf, and that was, I wouldn't call it human error, it's more human stupidity, and they had their knuckles wrapped for it. So Warewolf has really helped us on there. Also with our suppliers, they're very handy at sending substitutions without letting us know, and we find that trapping those changes of specifications at the point of delivery has helped us keep our stock really clean. And above all, when you look at Warewolf, it really gives us peace of mind. It's a reliable system and it reduces our risk. So we can go home at the end of the day knowing that our customers are being well looked after.
Perfect. Perfect. Love a good knuckle wrapping story. Great stuff. Thanks very much for that, Ian. I like being joined on these things rather than just talking to myself in a room, which is a bit weird. So, so guys, that brings us to the end of the agenda. So really just hopefully that's been insightful to introduce Warewolf, really announcing it to you guys as the Brightpearl community. Thanks again, and thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Scott.
And look forward to speaking to you all soon.